Happy Hobby Health Day! It's me, Terry. I am going to be doing a hobby vlog video today. I'll be posting one every Wednesday for the next little while until I either stop doing hobby stuff or I have nothing left to talk about. So if you're interested in seeing what I'm up to and what I can do for you, this is the day to tune in. This is my show and tell project. This is a display board I made for myself, a travel display board. This is both the thing that I use to ease my anticipation for the new Tau Codex, which just came out like a couple weeks back, and so I started making a board for what would be my Tau army, because I was intending to play them again, and I am still very much intending to play them again. And also to ease my pain for not being able to go to Adepticon this year, which is a total bummer. So I decided to make something for Adepticon next year that I can chuck into my suitcase and take with me as a display board. So here it is. This is my board. So I made it on like some canvas board, and I've got a piece of MDF to give it some strength. I'm going to glue these two together soon enough. But this is the first of a series of videos of the stuff that I used to get here. I'm just going to introduce you to some of the products that I used, because I did do a hobby haul video, I guess. Almost like a year ago, I guess, almost 2 years ago. So showing off all these products I bought, which I have used since then, and kind of want to show you how I have been using them and what I've been doing with them and what the interesting properties of them are. So this is the video for that today, a couple of them anyways. So yeah, this is the series. If you have a question, if you have comments, leave them below. Otherwise, let's get to the video. Okay, so the first product I'm going to talk about is Coarse Pumice Gel. If you guys haven't heard of it, it's a artist medium. It's a texture medium that basically has grains of, essentially it's sand, but they use pumice because it's lighter, and mixed with an acrylic medium gel. It dries, they say it dries matte and stuff, but basically this is what I tend to use in place of sand basing. Everyone goes to Games Workshop, they'll buy the white glue and some like a bucket of sand for whatever, $5, $10, whatever Games Workshop is choosing to sell sand for now. And for the same price you're paying for that stuff, you can buy a jar of this stuff and do like at least a couple full armies of bases. And the nice thing about this, unlike the sand where you either super glue it or white glue it down to a base, you let that dry, you glue seal over that, you let that dry, and then you paint over that, or prime over it, and then let that dry before you can actually get to basing. The nice thing about using artists' mediums is that they are made for holding paint. And when you mix paint into these mediums, it doesn't change the property of the medium. It doesn't really dilute it. So you can mix a fair amount of color in there. It holds the paint well. It doesn't dilute that. Unlike, for example, when I was still like sand basing my models, I would mix the old Games Workshop inks into that glue seal. That glue seal was still, because it was so watery, it was still not thick enough to like really hide the color of the sand. And I still ended up having to prime the bases afterwards and then waiting for that to dry before even getting to basing. So the first thing you need to do, whenever you work with any artist mediums, you have to know that you need to prime your bases. So I'm using a canvas here so I can kind of show you what these products look like. I'm going to do a bit of the product on plain backing without any color in it, so you can see how it dries and what color it dries, because it's quite neutral. It's like a white-ish color, essentially. And then I'm going to mix some paint into it. I've got some black, just some student-grade artist acrylic paint. Especially when it comes to bases, if you're, and particularly if you're going to do like tabletops or display boards, save the money and go for an student artist paint color for that stuff. It tends to be a lot cheaper. Like this thing costs about as much as like, let me get the, like one of these little guys here, like, and it's pretty obvious, like this is less than half a fluid ounce is 8 freaking ounces. I know what I'm choosing to do when I need to do tables or just a lot of bases in general, and really it's black, right? So I'm gonna throw a little bit of this pumice gel out here. I'm gonna actually demonstrate this here. So this is the gel. You're looking down at the table, obviously. I can hold it upside down, hold it sideways, and it doesn't move. It's so viscous that it's actually, you know, I'm vertical to the ground with this stuff, and it's not falling off. When artists paint on canvas, they're painting vertically, and so the mediums are meant for usage in that manner a lot of times, and because of that, you can do things with this that you wouldn't necessarily be able to really build up with sand, like the sides of movement trays, which tend to be kind of sideways and a little bit vertical. You can build it up with this product as well. So I'm just going to basically spread a little bit out on this corner here. You do need to put it on a little bit thicker than you would normally feel comfortable with, just because the acrylic medium, that's the gel essentially that is holding this thing together, is pretty, I guess the word I'm looking for is, it dries smaller, so it shrinks as it dries, and once you kind of put it on, I'm putting on about like, you know, between a 1/16 of an inch and like an 1/8 of an inch of product. Like you can see there's quite a bit of product on there, onto the base, and that's a pretty, like that's a heavy, it looks heavy, and it is pretty heavy. If you can go a little thinner, you can kind of skim it if you just want like surface texture, but I want to build something up here, so you can kind of use it in that regard. You can also kind of scratch into it a little bit, make divots, make puddles. If you're looking for that kind of texture as well, it's great for that. And then you just let it dry. So I'm going to mix that on, and then I'm going to, you know what, I'll do a couple, and then I'm going to basically take a little bit of the black and mix it in my palette here. I just have a paint, like an old tile, and I'm just going to mix some color into it. Again, the nice thing about these products is that you can mix a decent amount of color into it and still have a product that performs just as well. These artists, a lot of the artists' student quality stuff it's heavy body. So if you paint it on your own, it actually has a little bit of it's not thin. It didn't lie flat. Unlike Games Workshop model paints, for obvious reasons, you don't want to hide details in the model. They're called light body or no body paints. They're almost like acrylic inks, but you can see I didn't really mix a ton of paint in there, but it really spreads out. It goes a long way, and I'm gonna put it on this white section here. I might need more actually, and I'll let it dry to show you just how opaque it is. The thing about, and don't go and use like the crappy like craft paint colors, like these tubes here. These ones I basically let my kid paint with it. It's not good for they don't work as well. The pigmentation is totally diluted in those products. But when you're getting like artist grade stuff, even the student grade, what the student grade stuff just pretty much means is you have a more restricted palette in terms of color. But the product itself is extremely highly pigmented. So again, I didn't put a ton of black in there, and that's. So I'm going to let the pumice gels dry. I gave a little bit of a blow dry, and you can kind of see them start to set up. The sheen is going away, and they're kind of shrinking a little bit in terms of the height I had on them. But I'm going to start actually talking about the fine pumice gel now. It's a lot different. This is significantly different product. This isn't like, you know, sandpaper and fine sandpaper when you compare the coarse gel to the fine gel, because the fine gel has really tiny, incredibly tiny particles in it, that it's not comparable to like going from like a 50 grit to 100 grit sandpaper. This is like going from sand to going to canvas. The surface you're essentially building is a canvas surface. It's like a gritty paper kind of surface. So let me crack this. I don't know if you can see, but the gel pretty much looks smooth, and it's really nice to have as a smooth texture surface, because it does give you something to work with underneath. That isn't just smooth plastic. It actually, because it does have a pumice gel in it, or a pumice stone in it in a finer form, it still holds well. And basically I'll show you how it looks on the canvas again, and I'm just going to smooth it out here. It holds etching and surface stuff, so if you put lines in it, those lines will hold. But I'm going to put like a smooth surface on here, and I'm also going to put on a textured surface. So this is what I use this for, because it holds so beautifully. So let me smooth this surface out, and then I'll take a little more product. This is great for making like muddy effects, and if you're going to go with a table that has like a very textured surface, basically I put a thick layer down like this, and then I tap it. And if you tap it, you get these striations that are really really fine. And the smaller the surface, obviously, and the less product you have, the finer those striations are. So I'll put in a kind of a finer layer there. But you just get this really interesting texture, and it picks up like it's wet mud, and it dry brushes beautifully. Those really high peaks, they typically flatten out as it dries, so you do have to remember this does still smooth down a little bit, but you do get a very interesting texture that you can use on bases. Again, tread tracks, flyer tracks, like if you've got a really large base, Nurgle bases, this kind of wet mud look is pretty interesting. Now I'm working in a small space. If you do it on a larger base, you can have a lot more variation as well, and basically it dry brushes beautifully. I'm going to mix some of this stuff again on the palette with a little bit of paint. You don't need that much paint. Again, with these artist mediums, it carries the paint so well that a little goes a really long way, and that's the beauty of the product. It just extends your paint. So if you don't want to go out and buy a big jug of student paint, you do have a whole bunch of leftover Games Workshop paint. God knows I have old jars still sitting around. Or you got Vallejo blacks or greens you don't want to really use on models but would look great on bases. Totally go ahead and use it in here, and you'll be surprised on how far the color goes. So again, I'm just going to take a little bit of black, and I'll mix that in there. Okay, so they're dry. You can see how much they've kind of shrunk down. Even the coarse stuff, it's come down quite a bit. I put it on pretty thick, and it's still come down a reasonable amount. The products are like dry to the touch. They still could dry a little bit more underneath, but at this point you can actually use them and let your bases dry once you've got paint on them on the inside. I usually let my bases dry like overnight. I do a lot of hobby time in the evening, so if you do up these bases and you just let them dry overnight, you can be sure that they're pretty dry if you keep them in a pretty dry, warm place. So I'm going to dry brush these with some lighter colors for the black and a darker, like, burnt umber for the base. Again, I'm using student acrylics. You can use whatever you want. If Games Workshop wants to sell you some dry brushing paints, you use those as well. If you're doing just a few bases, it's fine. If you're doing a whole tabletop or a display base, probably more economical to pick up some student grade artist paint. So I'm going to just start with the lighter colors. You can see how the sheen is a little bit different in all the products. That's just because, again, the paint, the product does take on a little bit of the paint's matteness or sheenness. So if your paint is a particularly glossy finish, I'm going to grab some paper towel and I'm just going to dry brush over all the textures so you can kind of see how. So I'm just going to dry brush over this stuff here. And you can see the high points and the low points and the bumpiness in the product as well. So I'm just using a very contrasting color. Obviously you can build up the dry brushing as well, but you get that really, basically you get a very muddy looking ground feel in using a kind of speckled finish on the fine pumice gel. On the flat pumice gel, you get a very similar finish to what you would get if you were just, say, using if you're just using the plastic base. Now, what's nice about the fine pumice gel is, for example, if you want to build up using some coarse gel and build up height on your base, or just like finish off with sand and realize, hey, I want to put some other effects in there, this product is actually really great for smoothing that over as well. And it's pretty flat. Also, if your bases do have some texture that you do want to hide, like I'll show you what, like, you can see that with the dry brushing of the canvas, you also get that canvasy look. Everything looked quilted. You don't get that with this finish here. It's a very flat, matte finish. And then obviously you can take this and just really do a heavy dry brush on it. Obviously with the coarse stuff, it really takes a while dry brushing, and it looks fantastic when it's dry brushed, and you can really manhandle this product again. Again, this is just an alternative to using sand and white glue for your bases. And if you're going to have if you're going to spend just a little more money, if you're going to buy the Games Workshop sand and you're going to buy the Games Workshop glue, for the money you can get better products out there at the artist store. Alright, so let's do this again with the black stuff here. So here we go, titanium white, unbleached titanium I should say, which is kind of like a bone color. Again, over the black. You can do it really heavy again, because the more obvious your texturing, the more the dry brushing really picks it up. So that's the black. Again, on the pumice, you can kind of see there is a little bit of resistance and texture, but there really isn't any texture at all. It's just flat. And on the coarse, now it just picks up everything. I tend to do a bit of a kind of a wet brushing almost on the coarse stuff because it's so heavily textured. You can also ink these down, and I would recommend, if you're going to go with a really muddy look, you can ink the black stuff down, and it looks really beautiful. You get a really fantastic effect to it. So anyways, Now, that's it right there. Okay, so here's the end result of kind of the samples I made up. I'm gonna turn on the autofocus, let you have a good gander at them. You get a lot of detail in the coarse gels, and you get a lot of texture, just like sand. And in the smooth gels, you get like this. You do get a smoothness, but you can also see there's a milkiness in color, but you do see through it as well. So it's really interesting in making for stuff like this. You get really beautiful membrane kind of textures that are really interesting ultimately to work with. I'm just going to take a pen and just dab at them. They don't scratch off. This is something that sand will do. Sand will break off and chip off and do that. If you're really abusive, it will come off. This stuff is pretty stay proof. Provided again you prime your bases. You gotta prime your bases. And it actually holds quite well. So this is the first of a series. This is on the Pumice gels. I do use a lot of other stuff, like on my big board here. This is most of this texture that's on this board right now is just the finest pumice gel and that kind of lifting off technique that I used. So here, like, throw it up here again, the autofocus. So you can see there's some crackle paste I've put it on, but most of this membraney, interesting goodness here, all those membranes, that's all fine pumice gel. So tune back next week where I'm going to talk a little bit about crackle paste, about pouring medium, hopefully, and as well as some mattifying finishes to your base top. Oh, and I totally forgot. I will be posting on a Friday, a Fangirl Friday. This week I'm fangirling on Tim Schafer, who is one of the best creative directors in the game dev industry, for games you have never heard of but probably really should play. So hopefully I see you on Friday. Again, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think of these videos.